The oldest rule in the galaxy was shattered. Never enrage the humans HFY. No one in the galaxy remembered when the rule was first spoken. It did not exist in law books or star charts. It was not carved into monuments or written in treaties. Yet it survived longer than any empire, older than most stars that still burned. Never enrage the humans. Among the elders of the galactic conquered, the rule was treated like gravity. Invisible, unquestioned, and very real. Younger species often laughed when they heard it. Humans were not large. They did not live long. Their ships were practical, not beautiful. Their space stations were crowded and noisy instead of elegant and silent. They did not look like something to fear. Ambassador Kester of the Virelian Collective watched the humans from across the Grand Assembly Hall. The chamber was vast, shaped like a hollow star, with floating platforms for each species. Lights from 1,000 suns shimmered through the transparent ceiling. The humans sat together on a simple platform. No glowing shields, no living crystal decor, just metal chairs, data screens, and a shared pot of something they called coffee. They were laughing. Kester's eye stalks twitched uneasily. Humans laughing in the conquered always made older species nervous. "Why do they smile so much?" whispered a young delegate from the Lothran swarm, leaning close. Kester did not answer right away. He had been alive long enough to know that some questions were better left unanswered. "They smile," he said finally, "because nothing has gone wrong yet." The Lothran delegate made a clicking sound, confused. "Is that unusual?" "Yes," Kester replied softly. "Very." Long ago, before Kester was born, before the Conquered itself, humans had arrived quietly on the galactic stage. They did not conquer worlds. They did not demand tribute. They asked questions, offered trade, and studied everything. They were curious. That curiosity had saved them many times. When stronger species tried to pressure them, humans adapted. When ancient machines threatened shared space lanes, humans solved problems no one else could understand. They created systems so complex that over time the galaxy depended on them without noticing. Navigation protocols, trade algorithms, translation frameworks, emergency response networks. Human-made systems were everywhere, and humans never reminded anyone of that fact. The assembly session began with a soft harmonic tone that vibrated through every species, hearing range. Representatives turned their attention to the central dais, where the rotating symbol of the galactic conquered glowed. "Today's agenda," announced the neutral AI moderator, "includes trade corridor revisions, resource classifications, and territorial arbitration." The words sounded calm, too calm. Kester felt the tension ripple through the hall when the symbol of the Thalrex ascendancy appeared. The Thalrex were old, proud, and expanding fast. Their ships were massive, their cities sharp-edged and towering. They believed the galaxy worked best under clear hierarchies, with themselves near the top. Their high envoy, Zarkal, stepped forward. "Honored delegates," Zarkal said, voice amplified and smooth, "the ascendancy proposes a necessary correction to outdated trade routes." A projection appeared, lines shifted, corridors glowed red. Human trade lanes, several delegates glanced toward the human platform. The humans stopped laughing, they listened. Zarkal continued. "Due to inefficiencies and security risks, these corridors will be reassigned under ascendancy oversight. Human commercial access will be limited." The word limited echoed strangely. Kester's heart tightened. This was not a mistake. This was a test. The Lothran delegate whispered, "Is this allowed?" "Legally," Kester said. "Yes." "And otherwise?" Kester did not respond. A human stood. She was not tall, not armored. She wore a simple dark uniform and carried no visible technology except a small data slate. "Ambassador Alina Park," she said calmly. "Terran Union." Her voice was steady, not angry, not raised. "We request clarification," Park said. "These routes were jointly developed and maintained." Zarkal inclined his massive head slightly. "Correct." "And now they will be jointly remembered." Some species shifted uncomfortably. "This change will impact humanitarian shipping," Park said. "The ascendancy has evaluated the cost," Zarkal replied. "Acceptable," Park nodded once. She did not argue, she did not threaten. "Understood," she said. "Humanity will comply with the Conquered's decision." Whispers filled the hall. That was it. Zarkal looked surprised. He had expected resistance, anger, bargaining. Instead, the humans sat back down. The meeting moved on, but the elders did not relax. Kester closed his eyes briefly. He had seen this before in old recordings, in stories told by those who survived past mistakes. Human anger was loud. Human silence was dangerous. As the assembly ended, delegates drifted away. The humans gathered their belongings, speaking quietly among themselves. No visible emotion, no protest. The Lothran delegate exhaled. That wasn't so bad. Kester placed a limb gently on the younger being's shoulder. Listen to me, he said, very carefully. Yes. The rule exists for a reason. But they accepted it, the Lothran said. They didn't fight. Kester's voice dropped to a whisper. Humans do not fight first when they are angry. What do? They plan. In the days that followed, nothing dramatic happened. No fleets moved. No threats were issued. News feeds remained calm. That worried Kester more than anything. Human embassies began reducing staff. Cultural exchanges were postponed with polite apologies. Data sharing agreements quietly expired. No announcements, just absence. Trade networks adjusted. At first, no one noticed. Then shipping times grew longer. Navigation updates stopped arriving on schedule. Predictive models began producing small errors, minor issues, easy to ignore. The Thalrex dismissed concerns. Human systems are replaceable, their analysts claimed. But replacement took time. And humans had built those systems to grow with the galaxy, not against it. Deep within Terran space, in places not marked on common star maps, lights turned on in facilities long thought inactive. Human engineers worked without panic, without haste. They spoke in calm voices. We warned them, one said. They chose not to listen, another replied. No one spoke of revenge, only of preparation. Kester watched the quiet changes unfold with growing dread. He sent private messages to old allies. The rule has been tested, he wrote, and broken. Responses came quickly. Some remembered, some had forgotten. And some were only beginning to understand that the most dangerous moment in the galaxy was not when humans shouted, but when they nodded politely and stepped back. Far from the assembly hall, Ambassador Elena Park looked out at the stars from her office. Begin Phase 1, she said softly. There was no anger in her voice, only certainty. The rule had been ignored, and the galaxy would soon remember why it existed. Most species believed silence meant fear, weakness, or confusion. When a civilization stopped speaking, stopped protesting, stopped demanding, it usually meant they were losing. That belief had ended many empires. For humans, silence meant something else entirely. Ambassador Elena Park stood inside the Terran Union's diplomatic hub, a quiet station orbiting a calm blue star. The room around her was simple, metal walls, soft lights, and screens filled with flowing data. Nothing here looked impressive. Humans rarely bothered to impress anyone with appearances. What is the status? She asked. A man at the central console looked up. Phase 1 is active across all sectors. Withdrawals are complete. Any reaction? Confusion, he replied. Some concern, no direct accusations. Park nodded. That was expected. Across human-controlled space, embassies had not closed. They had simply thinned. Cultural events were postponed with polite messages. Shared research labs returned equipment and wished everyone well. Human advisors left foreign governments with neatly organized files and careful instructions. No doors were slammed. No bridges were burned. The galaxy barely noticed at first. On the Thalrex capital world, High Envoy Zarkal watched reports scroll across his command chamber. Numbers flickered, lines shifted. The data was dense, complex, and mostly boring. Minor trade delays, an aide reported. Navigation recalibration requests pending. Zarkal waved a claw dismissively. Human inefficiency, nothing more. But these systems were. Built by humans, Zarkal interrupted. Yes, and now they are no longer providing free maintenance. That is their right. He leaned back, satisfied. They will return, he added. They always do. He believed this because every other species always had. Elsewhere, Ambassador Kester sat in his private chamber aboard a Virelian listening post. He had stopped sleeping properly. His long life had taught him to respect patterns, and the pattern unfolding now made his inner membranes ache with dread. He studied old archives, records sealed, then unsealed, then forgotten again. Civilizations that had dismissed human warnings. Civilizations that had laughed at the rule. Their endings were never dramatic. No great battles, no final stands. They simply became irrelevant. Trade routes shifted. Allies drifted away. Infrastructure failed to keep pace with change. And then silence. Kester sent another message, encrypted and urgent. Humans have withdrawn their presence. This is not retreat. This is preparation. Some replied with concern. Others with disbelief. and some did not reply at all. Within weeks, small problems began to grow. Cargo ships arrived late at conquered stations. Navigation beacons gave conflicting data, forcing captains to slow down and double-check routes. Translation systems lagged, misinterpreting complex phrases and legal language. None of it was dangerous, but all of it was inconvenient. Galactic economies were built on convenience. A merchant guild complained to the conquered council. Our shipping efficiency has dropped 3%. 3% did not sound serious, until it became 5, then 8. Thalrex analysts worked long hours trying to adjust models that no longer behaved as expected. Human-developed predictive software still functioned, but without updates it slowly fell behind reality. "Why does it keep failing?" one analyst demanded. "It's not failing," another said quietly. "It's aging." The idea unsettled them. Human technology was designed differently from most. It was not static. It learned. It evolved. It expected cooperation and feedback. Without humans in the loop, the systems did not break. They simply stopped improving. On a distant trade world, a minor species council argued over a delayed shipment of medical supplies. The delay was small, but the explanation was unclear. Navigation discrepancies, scheduling conflicts, routing inefficiencies, a council elder frowned. "These routes were optimized by humans," a younger member scoffed. "Then we should optimize them ourselves." They tried. It took 3 weeks to match what humans had done in hours, and even then the solution was temporary. In human space, the mood was calm. There were no speeches, no angry broadcasts. Citizens went to work, drank coffee, argued about entertainment, and lived their lives. But beneath the surface, something had changed. Data flowed inward. Human research teams redirected focus. Systems once designed for universal compatibility began shifting toward internal optimization. A young engineer looked at a display showing branching development paths. "If we continue this way, external systems will fall behind in a few years." Her supervisor nodded. "We know." "Is that okay? It's not our responsibility to hold everyone's hand forever," he said gently. "We offered partnership, they declined." No one celebrated, no one smiled. This was not victory, it was adjustment. Back at the Galactic Conquered, emergency subcommittees formed. Not because of crisis, but because of discomfort. Too many small things were going wrong at once. Ambassador Park attended one such meeting. She listened as delegates spoke over each other, frustration rising. "Our logistics are strained. Our models no longer align. Our systems feel disconnected." Finally, someone asked, "Ambassador Park, can humanity assist?" All eyes turned to her. She folded her hands calmly. "Humanity is always willing to cooperate." Relief spread through the chamber. "But," she continued, "cooperation requires mutual respect and shared responsibility." The room grew quiet. "Our recent withdrawal," Park said, "was not punishment. It was recalibration. We were contributing more than was sustainable under current conditions." Zarkel's image appeared on the central display. "You withdrew without warning," he accused. Park met his gaze evenly. "We complied with the Conquered's ruling. We made no demands. You disrupted galactic stability." "We removed ourselves from systems we no longer controlled," Park replied. "Stability requires trust." The word hung in the air. Trust. Kester watched the exchange from his platform, his limbs tense. He could see it now clearer than ever. The humans were not threatening anyone. They were teaching. After the meeting, a junior delegate approached Kester. "Is this really that serious?" Kester looked tired. "Tell me," he said, "what happens when a foundation stops growing while the structure above it continues to expand?" "It cracks," the delegate said slowly. "Yes," Kester replied, "and humans are the foundation of more things than most of you realize." Days turned into months. The galaxy adapted slowly and poorly. New systems were built, old ones patched, costs rose, efficiency fell. Still, no one apologized. The Thalrex ascendancy insisted they were strong enough to endure. Humans said nothing. One evening, Ambassador Park stood once more at her office window, watching ships drift through the stars. "Status update," she requested. A calm voice responded. "Phase 1 complete, external dependence decreasing, internal resilience increasing. Any requests for renegotiation?" "Several, none from the Thalrex," Park sighed softly. "They will wait too long," she said. "Yes," the voice agreed. "They always do." Far away, Kester closed another archive file and stared into the darkness of space. The rule had not been created to protect the galaxy from humans. It had been created to protect the galaxy from itself. And now, as the silence spread wider and deeper, Kester feared that part 2 of the old lesson was unfolding, the part where everyone realizes the cost of ignoring wisdom, but not yet the price of fixing it. The humans were still calm. Explain that to anyone who understood them. That was the most frightening part of all. Every civilization had delays. Every system had errors. Small failures were normal in a place as large and complex as interstellar space. That was what leaders told themselves again and again. But patterns did not care about comfort. They grew. On the neutral trade world of Seraph 9, Station Master Rilun stared at the traffic display in disbelief. Ships moved slower than they should. Docking schedules overlapped. Automated systems asked for confirmations that were never required before. "Why is the system asking me this?" Rilun muttered. A junior technician leaned closer. "It says the probability curve is unstable." "That curve has been stable for 40 cycles," the technician hesitated. "It was last updated by a human team." Rilun felt a cold pressure in his chest. "Send a request to the Terran Union." The reply came an hour later. Polite, professional, short. "We regret to inform you that this system is no longer under human maintenance. Full documentation was previously provided. We wish you success." Rilun closed his eyes. Documentation was not the same as understanding. Across the galaxy, similar moments were happening, not disasters, not emergencies, just friction, everywhere. A shipping alliance lost profits because routes no longer adjusted in real time. A research coalition struggled when shared models stopped aligning. Legal disputes dragged on as translation frameworks failed to catch subtle meaning shifts. No one could point to a single cause. But everyone felt the drag. Ambassador Kester attended a closed council meeting of elder species. The room was dim, the air heavy with unease. "We are seeing inefficiencies across multiple sectors," said a crystalline being whose voice chimed softly. "All trace back to human origin systems." A tall avian delegate ruffled its feathers. "Are they sabotaging us?" Kester reacted instantly. "No," the room fell silent. "No," the avian asked. "They do not sabotage," Kester said firmly. "They disengage." "Is there a difference?" someone asked. "Yes," Kester replied. "Sabotage is hostile, disengagement is educational." Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. "What do you mean?" the crystalline being asked. Kester took a slow breath. "Humans build systems that grow. They assume cooperation. When cooperation ends, the systems do not fail. They simply stop carrying others forward." The avian clicked its beak. "So what do we do?" Kester looked around the room. "We remember the rule." Elsewhere on the Thalrex capital world, confidence was beginning to crack. High Envoy Zarkal stood before a large projection of economic data. The curves no longer followed predicted paths. Adjustments fixed one problem but caused two more. "This is unacceptable," Zarkal growled. "Why can our analysts not correct this?" A senior advisor spoke carefully. "Our models were built on human frameworks. Without updates, they diverge faster than expected. Then replace them." "We are trying," the advisor said. "But the replacements lack context." Zarkal turned sharply. "Context? Human systems learned from decades of shared data," the advisor explained. "They understood patterns beyond raw numbers." Zarkal's mandibles tightened. "Are you saying we need humans?" "I am saying," the advisor replied, "that we relied on them more than we admitted." Zarkal dismissed the advisor and stood alone, staring at the stars beyond the chamber window. He did not like this feeling. It felt like losing control without being challenged. In human space, the changes were almost invisible. Ships moved efficiently. Trade flowed smoothly. Systems updated constantly. Human citizens barely noticed anything different, except for a slight increase in internal investment and research reminders. A young data scientist named Aaron leaned back in his chair, watching simulations run. "If we keep optimizing inward," he said, "external compatibility will drop below threshold." His colleague shrugged. "They made their choice." "Still feels strange," Aaron said. "We built all this to share." "We still are," she replied, "just not unconditionally." That was the human way, not punishment. Boundaries, back at the Concord, emergency forums multiplied. The tone shifted from annoyance to concern. A minor species representative spoke nervously. "Our emergency response network is slower, not broken, just slower." Another added, our trade forecasts are unreliable. A third whispered, our young are struggling to learn systems humans used to teach. Ambassador Elena Park listened to every word. When it was her turn, she stood calmly. Humanity regrets the difficulties you are experiencing, she said, but these outcomes were not hidden. We have long stated that shared systems require shared respect. Then help us, someone demanded. We are willing to, Park replied. Under fair terms, Zarkel's image appeared again. You are holding the galaxy hostage with your silence. Park's eyes remained steady. We are not holding anything. We are letting go. That statement spread across the Concord like a shockwave. Kester felt it settle deep in his bones. Letting go. That was the heart of the rule. Humans did not dominate through force. They dominated through relevance, and relevance could be withdrawn. In the weeks that followed, alliances began to shift. Some species quietly reopened talks with human representatives. Others increased internal development, realizing too late how far behind they were. The Thalrex ascendancy held firm. Pride was heavy and expensive. On a border world once optimized by human urban planners, infrastructure began showing strain. Energy grids required more manual oversight. Transportation schedules became rigid and inefficient. A city administrator stared at a maintenance report. Why does everything feel harder? An older technician answered quietly. Because someone made it easy before. That truth spread, slowly, relentlessly. Ambassador Kester sent one final message to the conquered elders. The rule was never a threat, he wrote. It was a warning. Humans do not need to defeat you. They only need to stop carrying you. On Earth, Ambassador Park reviewed a summary report. External systems degradation, moderate. Internal systems performance, optimal, the AI read. Park closed the file. They still haven't apologized, she said. No, the AI replied. Probability of delayed realization remains high. Park looked out at the stars again. This is the dangerous phase, she said softly. Yes, the AI agreed. This is when they begin to understand the problem, but not the solution. Far across the galaxy, leaders stared at failing projections, confused citizens asked hard questions, and ancient warnings resurfaced in forgotten archives. The small problems were no longer small. They were connected, and for the first time, the galaxy began to feel what it meant to exist without humans quietly holding everything together. The rule echoed again, louder now, carried by fear and regret instead of wisdom. Never enrage the humans. It came slowly, like pressure building in deep space, silent, invisible, and impossible to escape once it grew too strong. Across the galaxy, leaders who had once ignored the small problems now faced hard questions. Their people were not in danger. There was no chaos, no panic, but life was becoming harder, less smooth, less predictable, and that frightened them more than open crisis ever could. On the trade world of Seraph 9, Station Master Rilun sat through his third emergency meeting of the cycle. The room was filled with exhausted faces. We have compensated for delays, a logistics officer reported, but efficiency is down another 4%. A merchant guild leader slammed a hand on the table. 4% today, 6% tomorrow. This is unsustainable. Rilun raised a calming gesture. Has anyone contacted the humans again? There was an uncomfortable pause. We sent inquiries, someone said. They responded. And, Rilun asked. They were polite, the officer replied. They offered guidance, documentation, and training under revised partnership terms. The room grew quiet. Revised how? The guild leader asked. Rilun looked down at his data pad. Shared authority, shared decision-making, mutual respect clauses. A murmur spread. That's unacceptable, someone snapped. We managed fine before humans arrived. Rilun did not argue. He had heard that claim many times, but he also remembered how much easier everything had been. On the Thalrex capital world, High Envoy Zarkel faced his council. The chamber, once full of confidence, now felt heavy with unease. Our trade surplus has fallen, an economic advisor said. Not dangerously yet. Our allies are questioning joint ventures, another added. Zarkel clenched his claws. They are overreacting. Perhaps, the advisor said carefully, or perhaps they are remembering. Zarkel knew what they meant. The rule, he had dismissed it as superstition. Now it returned in every report, every warning, every hesitant message from allies. Humans are not attacking us, Zarkel said. They are simply absent. And that absence, the advisor replied, is changing the galaxy. Zarkel turned away, staring at a projection of shifting trade routes. Absence should not have power, yet it did. Ambassador Kester visited worlds that once thrived under human cooperation. He listened more than he spoke. On one such world, an elder administrator sighed. "We thought independence meant strength," Kester nodded slowly. "Independence without understanding is isolation." "Can we fix this?" the administrator asked. "Yes," Kester said, "but not by demanding." Throughout the Conquered, a new tone emerged. Less pride, more humility. Committees reviewed old agreements and realized how many clauses had been shaped by human foresight. Emergency networks, environmental controls, economic stabilizers all bore the same mark. Humans had never claimed credit. They had simply made things work. Ambassador Elena Park sat across from a delegation of minor species. Their posture was careful, respectful. "We wish to restore cooperation," their leader said. "Fully." Park listened quietly. "What does cooperation mean to you?" she asked. The leader hesitated. "Shared systems, shared benefits." "And shared responsibility?" Park asked gently. The delegation exchanged glances. "Yes," the leader said. "That too," Park nodded. "Then we can talk." Word spread quickly. Species willing to acknowledge human contributions found doors reopening. Advisors returned, systems improved, efficiency stabilized, not overnight, but steadily. The galaxy began to divide, not by power, but by willingness to learn. Those who adapted recovered. Those who resisted struggled. The Thalrex ascendancy resisted. Zarkal watched as former allies signed new agreements with humans. He felt betrayed. "They are choosing weakness," he snarled. "They are choosing stability," his advisor corrected. "By bowing. By listening." Zarkal struck the console with a claw. "We do not need humans." The advisor did not argue. Data argued for him. Thalrex systems grew more rigid. Growth slowed, innovation stalled, nothing collapsed, but nothing advanced. On Earth, a policy council reviewed external developments. "Several species have entered renewed partnership," an analyst reported. "Performance improvements noted." "And the Thalrex?" Park asked. "No response, no requests." Park exhaled slowly. "They are still deciding whether pride matters more than progress." "Should we pressure them?" someone asked. Park shook her head. "No, why not?" "Because pressure creates resistance," she said. "Understanding creates change." In the Conquered, Ambassador Kester addressed a private gathering of elders. "The rule was never meant as fear," he said. "It was meant as memory." "Memory of what?" someone asked. "Of the fact that humans improve what they touch," Kester replied. "And when they leave, that improvement stops." Silence followed, not fear, recognition. A junior delegate spoke softly. "We thought humans needed us." Kester smiled sadly. "They wanted us." There is a difference. As cycles passed, the effects became clear. Worlds that cooperated regained efficiency. Education improved, trade stabilized. Citizens felt relief even if they did not fully understand why. Worlds that refused felt constant strain. Leaders worked harder for smaller gains. Innovation lagged. No one starved. No one panicked, but the gap widened. Zarkal stood alone again, gazing at the stars. He had built his power on dominance. Humans had built theirs on trust. One was fragile, the other was patient. A final report arrived. "Envoy," his advisor said carefully, "our long-term projections show decline unless we re-enter human frameworks." Zarkal closed his eyes. Decline, not defeat, but something worse. Irrelevance. On the edge of human space, Ambassador Park received a message request. Not from the Thalrex, from one of their closest allies. The message was brief. "We underestimated you. We seek dialogue." Park forwarded it to the council. "Begin integration talks," she said. The rule was no longer whispered. It was being learned, not through fear, but through experience. And as the galaxy adjusted to this new reality, one truth became impossible to ignore. Humanity did not need to rule the galaxy. It only needed to remain itself. And that was more powerful than any empire. It came from a forgotten place, deep within the Galactic Conquered's oldest data vaults, where information slept behind layers of dust, encryption, and neglect. The vault had been built long before most current species had discovered faster-than-light travel. Few remembered why it still existed, until now. Archivist Selûne was old, even by the long standards of her species. She worked slowly, carefully, surrounded by quiet humming machines and fading holographic records. She had noticed the pattern weeks ago, the same pattern others were only beginning to understand: human absence. Curious and uneasy, Selûne searched for the earliest references to the rule. Not the rumor, not the warning, the origin. It took time. It always did. When she finally found it, her breath caught. The file was marked with an ancient seal and a simple title. Regarding humanity, observations, and precautions. Selûne activated the record. A projection appeared, grainy, old, and unstable. The speaker was a being she recognized only from history lessons, one of the first conquered founders. If you are viewing this, the recording said, then humanity has likely reached a stage where others believe they understand it. The founder paused. They do not. Selûne leaned closer. The recording continued. Humans are not the strongest. They are not the fastest. They are not the longest-lived. We made those mistakes early, judging power by appearance. The image shifted to old star maps and data charts. What humans possess is escalation control. They do not react immediately. They observe, they absorb, they improve. Selûne felt a chill. When threatened, the founder said, humans do not rush to conflict. They redesign the problem until conflict is unnecessary. The archivist understood now. This was not a warning of war. It was a warning of being left behind. Selûne sent the file to the conquered council with the highest priority. Within hours, it spread, across diplomatic channels, across secure networks, across worlds already strained by human absence. Ambassador Kester received the archive while resting in his quarters. As he watched the ancient recording, his shoulders slumped with weary recognition. They tried to warn us, he whispered. The founder's voice echoed again. The rule exists not to protect us from humans, but to protect us from our own arrogance. The recording ended. Silence followed. In the conquered assembly, emergency sessions were called, not filled with shouting but with listening. Delegates watched the archive together. Some felt fear, others felt shame. A few felt relief because at last things made sense. A delegate from a mid-level trade union spoke quietly. They weren't hiding power. They were offering partnership, another replied, and we treated it like entitlement. Ambassador Alina Park watched the same archive from Earth. She said nothing as it ended. A council member asked carefully, did we know this? Park considered the question. Yes, she said, but we hoped others would learn it gently. Elsewhere on the Thalrex capital world, High Envoy Zarkal watched the recording alone. No advisors, no council, just him. The words struck deeper than any accusation. Redesign the problem until conflict is unnecessary. Zarkal had built his power on pressure, on forcing outcomes. Humans had taken pressure and turned it into space to grow, to think, to change the rules without announcing they were doing so. For the first time, Zarkal felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not fear, understanding, and understanding hurt. Across the galaxy, reactions varied. Some species acted quickly. They reopened talks with humanity, this time with honesty instead of advantage-seeking. They asked questions instead of making demands. Human responses were calm, consistent, fair. Systems were restored gradually. Advisors returned. Efficiency climbed, not to old levels, to better ones. Other species hesitated, still clinging to pride. They debated, they delayed, and fell further behind. The archive became required viewing in diplomatic academies. Scholars dissected it, leaders quoted it. Younger species learned the rule not as superstition, but as strategy. Humans remained quiet. They did not broadcast the archive. They did not comment on it. They simply continued living, improving, building. Ambassador Kester met with a group of new delegates, their expressions serious. We were wrong, one said. Yes, Kester replied gently, but wrong is not the end, it is the beginning. Will humans forgive us? Another asked. Kester paused. Humans are not interested in forgiveness. The delegates stiffened. They are interested in outcomes, Kester continued, and whether you are willing to grow. That comforted them more than forgiveness ever could. On Earth, Ambassador Park reviewed requests. There were many now. She approved some, deferred others, and declined a few, not out of spite, but out of alignment. Are we being too selective? A junior diplomat asked. Park shook her head. We are being honest. Meanwhile, Zarkal finally requested a private channel. The message was short. We wish to understand. Park read it twice. Prepare a response, she said. No conditions, no pressure. Just information, the diplomat asked. Yes, Park replied. Understanding has to start somewhere. When the channel opened, Zarkal appeared. No grand chamber, no symbols of dominance, just a simple background. You were right, he said. Park listened. We believed strength meant control, Zarkal continued. You showed us it can mean restraint, Park replied calmly. Restraint is harder, Zarkal inclined his head. We would like to learn. There was no surrender, no apology demanded, only a door opening. Across the galaxy, the truth settled in. The rule was not fear-based, it was consequence-based. Never enrage the humans, not because they will destroy you, but because they will stop building with you. And in a galaxy shaped by shared systems, shared growth, and shared progress, being left out was the greatest loss of all. As the stars turned and civilizations adjusted, the oldest rule took on new meaning. It was no longer a warning whispered by elders. It was a lesson written into history. And humanity, quiet as ever, continued forward, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as something far more powerful, a standard. The ancient archive had changed everything. It did not accuse, it did not threaten, it explained. And explanation, once understood, could not be ignored. Across the galactic conquered, leaders faced the same quiet question: do we grow with humans or without them? There was no vote to force the answer. Each world answered on its own. On the ocean world of Pelera, the planetary council met in a wide chamber surrounded by flowing water and soft light. The discussion was calm but serious. Our infrastructure is stable again, one counselor said. Human advisors returned last cycle. And the cost? Another asked. Shared oversight, shared standards, shared responsibility. The counselor paused, then added, and shared progress. No one argued, they approved the agreement. On the desert world of Kersh, leaders refused. We survived before humans, their ruler declared. We will survive again. They did survive, but slowly. And survival was not the same as growth. Ambassador Kester traveled more than he had in decades. He visited councils, spoke with elders, and listened to younger leaders struggling with the weight of choice. They are not forcing us, one young ruler said in frustration. Why does that make this harder? Kester smiled sadly. Because force removes responsibility. Choice does not. In the Galactic Conquered Assembly, a special session was called. Attendance was the highest in recorded history. Ambassador Alina Park stood at the center. She did not bring charts. She did not bring demands. She brought clarity. Humanity will not control the galaxy, she said. We do not want that role, murmurs spread. We will not punish those who choose independence, she continued. But we will no longer weaken ourselves to preserve unequal systems. Zarkal watched from his platform, silent. We offer partnership, Park said, not because you need us, but because shared systems work best when everyone respects them. A delegate asked, what happens if we refuse? Park answered honestly. Then you build your own future. The room grew quiet, no threats, no promises. Just reality. After the session, private negotiations increased. Humans were patient but firm. Agreements were clear. Terms were balanced. The phrase human standard entered common use not as dominance but as reliability. On Earth, internal discussions continued as well. Are we doing the right thing? A policy advisor asked. Park nodded. Yes, even if it costs us allies. Some worlds will fall behind. They already have, Park replied. We didn't push them, we stopped carrying them. That distinction mattered. Zarkal waited longer than he should have. Pride did not disappear easily, but data did not lie. Thalrek's innovation slowed. Youth left for opportunities elsewhere. Allies renegotiated trade, not because they were afraid, because they were tired of stagnation. Zarkal convened his council again. We face a decision, he said, not between strength and weakness, but between relevance and memory. Some resisted, others nodded. Finally, Zarkal spoke the words he had once dismissed. We will request partnership. The request was formal. Clear, respectful, no hidden demands. On Earth the message arrived. Park read it slowly. Prepare a response, she said. Standard terms? Nothing special, a diplomat asked. Park shook her head. Equality is special enough. When the reply reached Zarkal, he felt something unexpected. Relief. Across the galaxy, the pattern became clear. Those who chose partnership stabilized. Those who delayed struggled. Those who refused adapted slowly or not at all. No fleets moved. No weapons were raised. Yet the balance of power shifted, not through force, through alignment. Ambassador Kester returned to his home world at last. He stood on a balcony overlooking a peaceful city, watching lights move through the sky. A young scholar joined him. So the rule was true, the scholar said. Yes, Kester replied, but not how we thought. Kester nodded. Humans do not conquer space, they shape time. What do you mean? They make the future easier for those who walk beside them, Kester said. And harder for those who walk alone. In the conquered archives, the ancient rule was updated. Not rewritten, but expanded. Never enrage the humans, not because they will destroy you. They finally understand, someone said. Park shook her head. They are beginning to. Outside her window, ships moved smoothly through space, human-built, shared, evolving. The galaxy was changing again, not through war, not through fear, but through choice. And as that choice echoed across stars and centuries, one truth became clear to all who paid attention. Humanity did not ask the galaxy to follow. It simply kept walking. And in the end, everyone had to decide whether to keep up. There was no ceremony that marked the end of the old age. No signal that announced a new era. Instead, change arrived the way it always did when humans were involved, quietly, steadily, and with lasting effect. Years passed, trade routes stabilized, shared systems grew smarter, education standards aligned across dozens of species. Worlds that once struggled found themselves improving in small but meaningful ways, not because humans commanded it, because humans participated. The Galactic Concord met again in full session, but this time the mood was different. There was less tension, less pride, and more focus. Delegates spoke clearly, agreements were reached faster, arguments ended sooner. The galaxy was learning how to work together again. Ambassador Kester sat among the elders, his posture relaxed for the first time in many cycles. He listened as younger delegates discussed shared projects and future planning. They ask better questions now, he thought. That alone was progress. At the center of the assembly, Ambassador Alina Park stood quietly, observing. Humanity no longer dominated discussions, yet their influence was everywhere. Systems worked because they were built to improve. Policies succeeded because they were designed to adapt. A delegate from a newly integrated world addressed the assembly. We propose that the ancient rule be formally recorded, the delegate said. Not as a warning, but as guidance. Murmurs spread. Zarkal, now no longer High Envoy but senior liaison of the Thalrex Ascendancy, rose from his seat. We support this proposal, he said. Many turned to look at him. Once he had been the symbol of resistance. Now he was something else, experience. The proposal was simple. The rule would be written into the Concord Charter, not as fear, not as threat, but as understanding. The words were debated carefully. Humans did not suggest changes, they listened. Finally, the text was approved. Never enrage the humans, not because they are violent. Not because they seek control, but because they will continue forward. I wanted to be sure, Kester replied. Rules fade when memories weaken. And now, Kester smiled, now it is no longer a rule, it is a lesson. Elsewhere across human space, life continued normally. Engineers improved systems, teachers educated. Scientists asked questions with no immediate answers. Humans did not celebrate the charter change. They rarely celebrated such things. On Earth, a child asked her teacher why humans were important in the galaxy. The teacher thought for a moment. We are not important because we are better, she said. We are important because we help things work. The child nodded, satisfied. That answer felt right. On the Thalrex homeworld, Zarkal walked through a research center filled with mixed-species teams. The air buzzed with ideas, collaboration, and shared effort. An old advisor approached him. Do you regret the past? Zarkal considered the question. I regret misunderstanding, he said, but not learning. That, too, was progress. Ambassador Park received a message from a distant frontier world, one still choosing its path. We do not wish to join fully, the message said, but we respect your methods. May we observe? Park approved the request. Observation led to understanding. Understanding led to choice. That was enough. As decades passed, the galaxy grew more complex, but also more stable. Crises still happened. Problems still arose, but now they were faced together with systems designed to adjust rather than break. Historians recorded the period not as a conflict, but as a correction. They called it the quiet turning. Ambassador Kester, now very old, recorded his final thoughts for the archives. We once feared humans, he said. Then we depended on them. Finally, we learned to walk with them. His recording ended with a soft sigh. In the deepest vault of the Concord, the ancient archive was updated one last time. A final note was added by a neutral AI historian. Humanity did not conquer the galaxy. It did not rule it. It simply refused to stop moving forward. Far beyond conquered space, new civilizations began to emerge. They studied the stars, searched the archives, and learned the same lesson others had learned before them. The rule was there, clear, simple, and true. Humans continued their journey, not loud, not proud, not demanding, just consistent. And in a galaxy that finally understood the value of patience, that consistency became the most powerful force of all. The rule had been shattered once. It would never be forgotten again.